Okay, I think we have close to 25 participants now, and I think right across from Australia to friends in Europe who have been able to join this online discussion. Thank you so much for making it across time zones. It's sometimes very difficult. It's probably late evenings in East Asia and Australia, and of course, early mornings here in Europe. So thank you so much for making it to this discussion. And without further ado, I hand over the stage to Regional Director, ICA Asian Pacific, Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer, to share opening remarks, and then we move on to the presentations for the day.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay. Good. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and I guess I should add good evening too. I didn't realize we were stretched across a difference of 12 hours between from Australia all the way to Brussels in Europe. So let me again welcome everyone to the online presentation and discussion on the worker cooperative legislation, the journey from Japan. And I say journey because it's taken 20 years of continuous effort by the Japanese Workers Cooperative Union, its members, to get this act to see the light of the day. And our speaker, Osamu Nakano, has first-hand experience of this journey, which culminated with the Workers' Cooperative Act on December 4th, 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic did not diminish the resolve of JWCU to ensure that the act was discussed, was put forth, and was voted upon. So, after 42 years, Japan is seeing a new cooperative act. So, our congratulations to the Japan Workers Cooperative Union, its members, boards, staff, Japanese cooperative movement, and stakeholders for making this act come to fruition. Let me also welcome Francisca Zaganelli, Membership Coordinator from SICOPA. SICOPA, as you all know, is a sectoral organization of the International Cooperative Alliance since 1947. And I will let Francisca say more about SICOPA and its activities later during the discussion. For the Asia Pacific region, work has been one of the priority areas as part of the ICA EU project, Cooperatives in Development, People-Centered Business in Action. And the two other areas have been youth and sustainable development. And for me, there is a close relationship, again, when we look at worker cooperatives, youth and sustainable development. And we can get into that also during the discussion. In particular, when it comes to work and workers' cooperatives and worker ownership, we've tried to look at it in a variety of ways in which to stimulate interest in the region and to also understand what members are doing from across the Asia Pacific countries. In 2016, we organized stakeholders meeting on collective entrepreneurship at the UL Cyber Park. And I see that we have representation. I think Kishore is there from the Orolunga Labor Contract Cooperative Society, a very well-respected, recognized labor cooperative in India. And the idea was to provide a platform to share knowledge on industrial, artisan, and service provider cooperatives in the region, in India, and in particular in South Asia in general. So in 2016, we had the first interaction. In 2016, August, November, in fact, we had the regional assembly in New Delhi, And during the assembly, we organized a half a day workshop in which Mr. Bruno Rolands, he was then the Secretary General of SICOPA and now the ICA Director General, and Hyun Sik Um, both of them were present. And the idea was to see how we could get members to commit to do research projects and to strategize on how we can form a network of workers and worker cooperatives in the region. And again in 2018, we organized a conference, Cooperatives in the Changing World of Work, again in partnership with the Uralunga Labor Contract Cooperative Society. And this is where we also organized our first Copathon 1, which was to see how we can get youth involved in cooperatives, use technology, and see how cooperatives could be formed in the services and in the social arena, where again worker cooperatives tend to be prevalent. The conference came up. It was also timely, the conference, because that's when the ILO was having discussions around its paper on the future of work. And there was a global commission on the future of work, which was looking at coming out with a report. And so some of the recommendations from the this particular conference were sent to the ILO. In 2020, in collaboration with the Cooperative Development Network in Australia, and I see that Ms. Professor Anthony Jensen is also has also joined us here. We organized a roundtable discussion on worker cooperative buyouts, and the theme was on strengthening workers' cooperatives in the COVID-19 crisis. And they say that crises provide opportunities, and we've seen in the past also during times of crisis there have been an increase interest in cooperatives and worker cooperatives and looking at buyout from workers in distressed sectors. And also, there is a trend these days in terms of family owned businesses. We are finding that many who started their businesses at a young age have now reached their golden years and are looking to see how they can, how the businesses that they've started, how it could be continued. And many instances, the family members take over. In many cases, there is less interest on part of the family to continue with the business. So the opportunity is there for the workers themselves to buy and run the business, and that's something which we're seeing is happening in many countries in the region. What I'd like to touch upon here briefly also is the research project which we undertook with SICOPA in 2019. Hyun Sik is here. He was very actively a part of it. This research project was titled Cooperatives in Industrial and Service Sectors in the Asia Pacific region. And it was to look at models, work and employment, ecosystem, and public policies around this. And a number of members from the region were involved. And I see many of the countries which were part of this. In fact, when this research started, 41 cooperatives types in 12 Asia Pacific countries were looked into. And from among them, 25 cooperative types in 5 countries, the Philippines, Korea, Japan, India, and Australia, from where information was collected with our members and local experts. And additionally, 4 other countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Iran, and Hong Kong, were also part of this research project. What the report showed in terms of trends was that what's happening is a modernization of some of the old sectors. There are newly emerging initiatives, important role of cooperatives, the movement and social movements in this area, because there is both an economic, environmental, and a social mission. Challenges was in terms of how do we form new forms of work and employment? How do we encourage more such worker cooperatives to be formed? What is the legal status of these workers, the social promotion, and in terms of social promotion and the social benefits? and what are the other risks involved in it. These were some of the broad trends which the paper highlighted, and what it came up in terms of recommendation. And why I mentioned this paper and the trends and the recommendation is it also relates closely with what Osamu is going to talk about their experience. And which came out of this paper were that there is need for appropriate legal framework, which is very important in terms of new legislation, clear definition of cooperative types, increasing awareness to the officers or people who are involved in the government and also the public in terms of these types and the typologies which are there. Being very clear, the recommendations were also that the worker member status need to be very clearly specified. We need to ensure that the labor tax regulation, the environment around it is also conducive. There is less direct control and more autonomy for the cooperatives. And what we find again, when you look at the history of cooperatives in South Asia and Southeast Asia, many of them, given their history and the sectors in which they were, had support from the government when they started. But then once you start, it's very difficult for the government to let go. So the issue of when we are talking about the whole area of worker cooperatives in new areas, in new emerging sectors, which have been there, but then when you're wanting to give a new impetus to it, then it's important to look at the cooperative values and principles and the statement of identity in terms of how do we look at control and autonomy, and also in terms of membership, how do we look at the number of members for when we look at again existing cooperatives in many countries because they started with agriculture, they started with credit. Uh, you had a minimum, it varies anywhere from 50 to 100 members that you need to start a cooperative. But this has also changed. In many countries, there have been legislations where the number of members have reduced. And this is also important. One of the recommendations was that how do you also look at minimum number of founding members, and how do we, I think, promote cooperatives as enterprises. I go back to the legacy of cooperatives in the region. Given how they started, the government support, they are viewed much more in on a welfare side, on the social side, rather than on the economic side. So I think this particular report really came up with some solid recommendations to see how the future, how work and ownership and cooperatives can, when we are looking at them afresh, what is it that needs to be looked at? And I did go through, I've heard Osamu present the Japanese worker cooperative movement and the act. And I think he'll touch upon some of these issues, which you can find there is a connection between the recommendations made and the experience of the Japanese cooperative movement. And I think for us, in short, for what we've been doing is, again, at this point, to see how we gain more knowledge, more understanding about worker cooperatives in their different forms across the Asia Pacific countries. We do have an informal network which has been meeting very consistently. Members from Japan, members from Korea, China, India, Iran, Indonesia have been meeting regularly, and there has been discussion to see how we can strengthen this network from an informal to a more formal thing. So that's one of the discussions around the network. It's also to give us information, and these webinars which and conferences which I've talked about are opportunities for us to get this information and know more about what's happening. And our interest also is in to see how we can pilot activities so that we can better understand what the ground situation is, and through the pilots can help us to scale up. And so that's something which we are also actively looking into. And finally, of course, to get data to better understand the state of work and ownership in the region, and also research. This one research which we've done has resulted in a good base document, and I'm sure we'll be interested to see much more of research happen in the region. So this, I think, for me, is a basket of things which we've done because it's one of the priority areas for the regional office, and we'd be more than happy to see how we can learn from each other, create a platform, and see how this particular area, especially given the pandemic and the areas which were affected. The services sector was badly affected. You look at tourism, you look at workers. In India, we had the migrant workers issues. The service sector has been very badly affected, as have the workers' cooperative. But then the need, it's also shown that this is where the real need lies, and we need to be doing more in these areas. So the opportunity is there, the interest is there. But I think, and there are experiences from the region to show how cooperatives during this time have shown their relevance, their resilience. And so the opportunity is there. And so it's how we all come together and see how we can work together in a more coordinated manner. So I'm looking forward to Osamu's presentation and also hearing about Sikopa and the work that they've been doing. And then I'm sure in the discussion, we'll get a better sense of what some of the issues are and what each one of you is thinking about, and then seeing how we can move forward. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm looking forward to the presentation and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Iyer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Iyer.
I'm sorry, I think I'm hearing my own echo. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for that opening remarks, and also helping the audience understand the background to this meeting and the whole network that we're talking about. With this, let us quickly move on to the first presentation for the day, which is by Ms. Francesca Zaganelli, who is also the membership coordinator for Sikopa, the International Organization of Cooperatives in the Industrial and Services Sector, and also, in fact, for the European Confederation of this very organization. Francesca, may I request you to please share your screen and share your presentation?
Okay, can you see it?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to present you Sikopa. I also, my presentation today will also supposed to focus on the findings and recommendation of the study that Balu Iyer already introduced. So maybe I will go a bit more in detail to give a bit more of a picture of the movement of cooperatives in industry and services sector in the Asia Pacific. But first, let me tell you about Sikopa, for those of you who don't know. As Balu said, Sikopa is a sector organization of the International Cooperative Alliance. We represent cooperatives active in the industry and services sector, and our members are federation or organizations representing and promoting mainly worker cooperatives, social cooperatives, and producers cooperatives. We are present in 32 countries and in the world, and with our 49 members, we affiliate 65,000 enterprises that in turn employ 4 million workers. In Asia Pacific, we have 8 members in 6 countries from Japan, India, Philippines, Vietnam, China, and Korea. Beyond, in fact, there is evidence that the cooperative and industry and services movement is actually much wider than what we represent, and employing so 20 million workers around the world, of which 11 million are worker members and 6 million are self-employed producer members. Of these cooperatives, 60% are found in Asia, followed by 19% in Europe and Americas. So I believe more of a reason why we should be having this kind of conversation, and let me thank you for this initiative and also this opportunity for sure to celebrate the occasion of development in the sense through the approval of the Worker Cooperative Act in Japan. To go a bit more in detail on the region and the knowledge we have of it, of course, the study that SICOPA and ICAP did in collaboration also with other partners in the Asia-Pacific region allowed us to give a perspective, a view, and better understanding, let's say, of the movement of industrial and service cooperative sector in the region. Also providing an analysis and recommendations that are helpful not only for the region but for the global movement as such, and also for more promoting further our sector. As Balwihar said, the study identified 41 cooperative types in 12 countries and analyzed also further individual cases. I will do a rather general analysis, but I suggest you to, if we can circulate or the link or the presentation, to look at the report for individual cases. There are good analysis of by country of the movement. And yet, Yunsik Heum that wrote the report is here, so maybe after he'll have the occasion to complement also some information. Let me tell you that so basically through the report, through the study, we were able to identify 7 different cooperative models in the sector through analyzing mainly 4 analytical dimensions that you can find here on this table on the first line. What is such as what is the member interest in the cooperative, the ways in which members are paid, what are the characteristics of payment, and who supervised the members' work. Through this, the study could identify. You will see in the vertical end column 7 dimensions, of which the last 2 were not considered relevant for this study because their membership is not related to work and employment in the cooperative, although they have to be mentioned here because they can be found in the sector. So, but they are not the scope. They were not the scope of this research. Worker cooperatives model can be found, are both type A and B, where defined by, are based on the definition of SICOPA on the World Declaration on Worker Cooperatives approved by ICA General Assembly in 2005 that provides a standard on the worker cooperative model at the international level. And according to this definition, in a worker cooperative, members share an interest in the work which is provided by or ensured through the cooperative. The worker, so the the difference between model A and model B is that members usually have the same form of, in the model A, members usually have the same form of employment contract used in conventional enterprises, and they are eligible for a social security system conceived for employees. In the model B, worker members are often considered as self-employed persons, so they are not eligible for security system conceived for employees, but can access individual one if available. And this difference makes an important distinction in terms of worker member social protection and rights at work. Just to give you a geographical picture, worker cooperatives A model were found in countries like Japan, Korea, Australia, Philippines, and India. And the worker cooperative model type B was mainly found in the Philippines. While the shared service cooperative model, it's also known as producer cooperative, is called like this to differentiate it from the most known producer cooperative model in the agricultural sector. And here the cooperative provides various kinds of services to facilitate member production activities and business, and but they don't hire their members as employees. Members here work under the supervision of their own client or by themselves, and they are paid either directly by their client or by the cooperative. And here they have their own tax and social security accounts as individual persons or legal persons without the cooperative as an intermediary. Here, this model was prevalently found in Korea and Australia. Then we have a mixed model that is a mix based on a mix of the previous two models presented. It seems to be rather a temporary situation in the development of the cooperative towards one of the previous two models. And in this case, some members keep their own job and join projects conducted by the cooperative as contractors. This model may bring about complicated situation concerning worker members' legal status and particularly their social security due to possible mixed classification of the worker members. And it is found prevalently in Korea and India. Then the multi-stakeholder cooperative model this is a cooperative. In this model, the members, there are different types of members that are represented in the governance structure of the cooperative, and no type of member has a dominant position in it, and this is what distinguishes it from other types of cooperative. And this model is mostly often used as a tool for a community and social development because it allows active involvement of different community stakeholders. And social cooperatives here are often identified as also multi-stakeholder cooperative. As you know, social cooperatives are specialized in the provision of services of general interest as one type, or in the reintegration through work of disadvantaged and marginalized workers. So as in the analysis, through the analysis of these types, this allowed to identify some major trends in the sector and in the region. And not surprisingly, these trends are not that different from those observed in other continents. briefly underlining some that were already mentioned, but that are somehow important, I think, to mention today. Well, the emerging of new initiatives, indeed, there are various kinds of initiatives that are emerging in the industry and services sector across Asia-Pacific region. And it is a case, for example, of worker cooperative model based in IT enterprises. But due to the complexity and constraints on some legal systems, many of them are not registered as cooperatives, but choose other form of enterprises. It's also to be underlined that in the region, many cooperatives benefit from strong support of the cooperative and social movement, and this is also helpful in situations where the institutional recognition is weak. It's good to know that in many countries there is a growing trend of cooperatives providing social services and local development services as their primary mission, and this is mainly related to the presence of public social services scheme that allow various kind of private providers, including cooperative, to enter social service provision. And also in this new world of work, the challenges that the new forms of work and employment bring to the workers. Well, it seems there are examples in the region, in particular Korea and Philippines, that shows how cooperative can provide protection and rights to freelancer workers. And regardless also of the difference in the cooperative types, there are some situations generally where the social protection schemes are also not fully applied to worker members, or where worker members are not eligible for the social protection schemes for employees. And finally, when cooperatives are considered as instruments for others, that is enterprises, individuals, or also public authorities, rather than for the members themselves, there is a risk of instrumentalization and a violation of labor regulation and fiscal regimes. And so based on these findings, we could, through the analysis of the reservoir, we could identify some recommendations that, despite the very different context they refer to, can be somehow generalized and allow to further promote cooperatives in the industry and services sector, and of course address related issues. And again, as it was said, the introduction of an appropriate legal framework, it's believed to be very important. We, in our experience and observation in SICOPA, know that the cooperative model in the industry and services sector need to be clarified, clearly defined, in the legal framework in order to reflect and strengthen the specificity of this sector, and of course deal with issues, upcoming issues. And this can be done through enacting a new legislation, or and we have a case here today, or defining clearly the cooperative types in existing legal framework. And again, and in case there is no legal framework, the role of the cooperative movement is very much important to increase awareness in the public authorities, but also in the public in general. We in SICOPA, we also believe that the legal framework should be in line with the international standards, such as the World Declaration on Worker Cooperatives that I mentioned before, but also the World Standard of Social Cooperatives that was approved in 2011. As we said before, defining the worker member status, legal status is important because it provides worker member with appropriate level of social protection and right at work, but also to recognize the specific way of working of worker cooperatives. And here also the principle of decent work should be at the center of this specification. Then there are other recommendations, the importance of monitoring cooperatives to prevent cases of misusing of this type of cooperatives, like for example pseudo cooperatives, through a minimum minimum use of tools such as the submission of an annual report or an external audit. The number of members is very important. In many Asian countries, the model, cooperative model of reference maybe is more agriculture, because are more diffuse, agricultural cooperative or consumer or financial service cooperative, which have a large membership. For worker cooperatives especially to start, it's very important to have a very reduced number of members, like 3, maximum 5 persons. And here, yes, and to the last 2 points. So cooperative should also cooperatives should also be fully recognized. That was also said, as an enterprise, but with this specificity of members-based democracy and human-centered value. And here, public authorities that are in charge of cooperatives should promote this model through different ministries and to the public at large, to make also to support better cooperatives by providing appropriate public policies and schemes. And SICOPA here has identified also, based on its experience, several key public policies that could help developing and strengthen such cooperatives, such as indivisible reserves, financing cooperative startups with worker members' unemployed benefit, and the promotion of worker buyouts. These are good examples that could be applicable in the region in particular. Finally, voilà, the cooperative sectoral organizations are important to support and strengthen the cooperatives, especially where there is no legal recognition, and this their role could be facilitated with specific institutional tools, which allow to scale up through secondary or tertiary cooperative organizations. I'm concluding. Hope we didn't take too long. Let me say that let me highlight that the most relevant piece of international law that promotes all type of cooperatives is a labor standard by the ILO, the recommendation 193, and this could mean that the present and the future of promoting cooperatives as such rests largely on worker cooperatives. The new legal act in Japan is a welcome move in this direction, and we are very happy to be here and celebrating this together with you. And this roundtable indeed comes at the right time. In SECOPA, we are looking forward to the run-up to Seoul Congress, where we hope to organize another such event to promote regional identity of worker cooperatives in the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much. For more questions and information, here you have the links.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for that wonderful presentation on SECOPA and, of course, the joint research that we undertook in the AP region. I encourage all participants to please share your comments or any clarifications or queries that you may have in the chat box for now, and also maybe at the end of the next presentation for any discussions on the presentation just made. With that note, then I take the opportunity to quickly welcome our next presenter, Mr. Osamu Nakano, who is also the board member and international relations officer at the Japanese Worker Cooperative Union. And he's, of course, been very active in this group, in this network, representing the allied cooperatives in the region. So I may not go into a detailed introduction, Osamu-san. I request you to share your screen and make the presentation, after which we can have some discussions on the two presentations we've seen. Thank you so much.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Barry Ayer and Mohi and ICAP to organize this wonderful roundtable. And thank you very much also for Francesca and the SECOPA to join this roundtable. And actually, thank you very much too for all of the participants. Actually, I know almost all of you, and I'm very happy to see you. Even under this kind of difficult situation, pandemic of COVID-19. But so we just have 15 minutes left. So my presentation will be pretty short. All right, Japan Workers Cooperative Union, my organization, JWCU National Center of Workers Cooperatives. And right now, so we have 16,000 members, working members. And we have over 450 business centers, business units throughout the country, Japan. And our turnover is also more than 330 million US dollars. Okay. And Workers Cooperative in Japan, so we are engaged in these business, elderly care, child care, and care and support for people with disability and youth with social difficulty and poor and needy. And we are also doing operating public facilities such as senior center, community center, and so on. And we are also doing cleaning service and hospital cleaning, street cleaning, and cleaning of private houses. And right now, so we are JWCU, or Workers Cooperative in Japan, so we are trying to develop more different field of business, including community-based forest management and farming and renewable energy business. But in a sense, Workers Cooperative in Japan, so we are engaged in the so-called essential work or social service And actually, as you know, essential works and social service is more important right now, today, under the pandemic of COVID-19. All right. By the way, so we define our working style as associated work, and here is a definition of associated work. It's a new way of working to create enterprises in which each person could be a master of his or her own life. It's a way of linking the needs of human life, local communities, and their difficulties, such that everybody jointly contribute to building capital, managing business democratically, and sharing responsibilities. And I'm sure all of you already know. So in workers' cooperatives, one working members uh, do while working members make capital contributions and work and involved in management of their cooperatives under the principle of one member, one vote. This is basic definition of workers cooperative, I think. And Japan, workers cooperative in Japan. So we are also we are also following this kind of basic structure or basic structure of workers cooperatives. Okay, and actually our working members includes those who having various kinds of difficulties or disabilities, mental or physical disabilities, alcoholism, Asperger's syndrome, drug dependence, HIV, etc., etc. And also, our members include ex-prisoners, ex-homeless, the youth with social difficulties, and so on. So in this regard, workers' cooperative in Japan is sometimes regarded as social cooperatives, for instance, in Italy. And in other words, so we have for almost 40 years, so we have create job creation or job opportunities for people with various kind of difficulties and disabilities. All right. So however, so we haven't have our own law, as you know, and then so for almost 20 years we have developed our legalization movement. And finally, last year, June 12th, last year, so the Worker Cooperative Bill was submitted to the House of Representative in Japan by 50 politicians with the support of 53 politicians from all political parties, from conservative parties to radical parties. And the bill was, and then the bill was finally passed by the House of Councillors on December 4th last year. All right, the Worker Cooperative Act Worker Cooperative Act in Japan consists of 171 articles, and then its new Cooperative Act in Japan for last 42 years. Mr. Baraya already mentions, and since 1979. When Forestry Cooperative Act was enacted. And objective, first article, objective is very important. So as you can see, the purpose of this act is to provide the necessary matters such as the establishment, management, and others concerning the organizations of which fundamental principle is that the members make capital contribution to them and their business are conducted by reflecting the opinions of the members, and the members themselves are engaged in their business, and to promote the creation of diverse employment opportunities through those organizations, and to promote the implementation of business to meet diverse demands in local communities by them, thereby contributing the realization of sustainable and vibrant communities. This figure explains the first article, objective of this act. Left side, on the right side, this is employment, the so-called employed work. In other words, working style under capitalist or private companies. Obviously, the division between investors, managers, employees. So, however, on the other hand, left side in worker cooperatives, member make capital contribution and work. And moreover, the business of workers' cooperatives should be done by reflecting the opinion of worker members. And we, as you know, we have 3 objectives. And one is creation of diverse employment opportunities. The second is implementation of business to meet diverse demands in local communities. And final purpose of this act, or final purpose of workers' cooperative in Japan, realization of sustainable and vibrant communities. And I'm gonna explain some fundamental characteristic of this act. First of all, ILO recommendation of 193 on promoting cooperatives. This act, according to this act, worker cooperative is obliged to uphold a high level of labor standards. To the least, it enters into labor contract with its worker members, and obviously assured them decent work. And this picture explains the certain kind of mutual relationship between worker cooperatives or its representative directors and worker members. And on the one hand, worker cooperatives, they have to have a conclusion. They have to conclude labor contract with their members. So this means members of workers cooperative should be under the direction and the supervision of the representative directors in a formal sense. So this is certain kind. This is requirements. So in order that worker members are protected by labor laws, and in other words, in order to get various labor protections, such as minimum wages, legal working hours, accident insurance, employment insurance. Workers in Japan should be employed. So this is this is a structure, or this is a situation of current labor laws in Japan. And in this regard, members of workers cooperative in Japan can get such a labor protections. But on the other hand, as I already told, so management of workers cooperative in Japan should be done by reflecting the opinions of members. Moreover, so worker members can participate in the decision-making process of workers cooperatives under the principle of one member, one vote. And moreover, so worker members can select representative director, for instance, or board members with whom they have a labor contract. So in this regard, there's a certain kind of mutual relationship between worker members and worker cooperatives in this act. So this is, I think, not only in Japan, but also many countries. So under current labor laws, I think workers should be employed. So in this regard, at least in Japan, under the current labor laws, this act is a very sophisticated legal expressions of worker cooperatives, or very sophisticated expression of the place of workers under the current labor laws, right? And there are several. There are also other fundamental characteristic of this act. For instance, obviously, the purpose of workers cooperative in Japan is the realization of sustainable and vibrant communities. This reflects strongly, seventh cooperative principle, of course, and SDGs. And also, the Worker Cooperative Act in Japan adopts the so-called principle-based approach. The establishment of worker cooperative is authorized when the conditions defined in the act are just met. This sharply contrasts with other cooperative in Japan, which can be established upon approval from the governmental ministries in charge. So in this regard, this act protects certain kind of autonomy of workers cooperative in Japan. All right, And moreover, according to law, at the minimum, just three founders and one members. In other words, just 4 members in total can establish workers' cooperatives. So this means it's pretty easy to establish workers' cooperative. So compare differently from other cooperative in Japan, for instance, consumer cooperative or agriculture cooperative. And moreover, there's no restriction on business field in this act. Workers' cooperative can be engaged in all kinds of business if they meet the above mentioned objectives, such as realization of sustainable communities, right? And however, workers' cooperative, we cannot do worker dispatching business. This is because worker dispatching business is not suitable to the spirit of this act. And finally, there's no dividend on capital contributions. Surplus is accumulated as employment creation fund and education fund, and the remaining is distributed to members depends on the amount of use and transaction with the cooperative business, namely the amount of work here. And at the same time, the act prescribes the worker cooperatives must not carry out their business for profit. In other words, this act emphasizes a non-profit character of workers' cooperatives. All right. So this is a very short explanation, but my presentation is almost end. And actually, the passage of this act in Japan is celebrated by so many organizations: ICA, ICAP, COPA, and ILO. And I'm pretty happy to receive such a congratulatory message. And this act will be effective 2 years from now. So it's expected many worker cooperative will be established under the new act, contributing to the great development of the cooperative movement in Japan. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Osamu-san, for the very insightful presentation and, of course, sharing the implications of this historic new act in Japan. We see there are already a few comments and probably also a couple of queries in the chat box. We might take a few minutes to just engage in a discussion and reflect upon the 2 presentations made. If participants have any queries or any direct comments, please feel free to unmute your mic and address your concerns, please. Okay, I see we have no microphones unmuted.
Can you hear me, Mohit?
Okay. Hello, Professor Jensen.
Yeah, look, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for organizing this roundtable, Balu and Mohit, and thank you for the wonderful presentations by Francesca and Osamu. I mean, yeah, it really opens up a lot of discussion and insights into the type of societies that can be built through the appropriate worker cooperative legislation. And I think we're seeing something very important emerging from Japan. And this is the whole question of associated work versus the employee-led approach. And I see that very much in the solidarity movement versus the liberal market model. And that leads me to my question to Francesca. Do you see the worker cooperatives' capacity to degenerate different in these different 7 cooperative models that you have put forward to us today, and the cultures in which they exist? Of course, you mentioned Japan, the Philippines, in Australia. So I'm just wondering if you could give us some insights on that question.
Thank you, Anthony. It's a good question indeed. I'll be happy to do so. I have to do myself some research, so I'll be happy to come back to you, and maybe I can take your email and answer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yes, the Asia Pacific Cooperative Research Partnership published a book last year called the Waking the Asian Pacific Cooperative Potential, and we looked at 5 or 6 different worker cooperatives in 6 different countries, and the political economy in those countries resulted in different capacities to degenerate. So yeah, I'd like to take that up with you. I think we could add a lot to each other's research.
Thank you so much, Professor Jensen and Francisca. Also, there's a question by John Ander Mustavi, if I'm not mistaken. If you're here, can you expand a bit on your remark?
Yeah, hello, Nakano-san. Thank you everyone for such an interesting presentation. Yeah, my question is like, how are you trying to attract the social entrepreneurs? There's a lot of social entrepreneurs in Japan who are really, really interested in the workers' cooperative movement, but they don't have a deep knowledge on it. Or I feel from my experience working in Japan that there's some kind of separation between the social entrepreneurs and the workers' cooperative movement, but that if you could cooperate, that would be way stronger. Like that could create a stronger impact. And I think that a lot of social entrepreneurs now would be really interested to change their legal form to a workers' cooperative law. Yeah, I don't know if you could hear me. My question is, yeah, my question was that, like, so how are you going to engage and attract the social entrepreneurs, Japanese social entrepreneurs, to change their legal forms to become workers' cooperative?
Osama-san, would you like to take it?
I'm not sure actually, but
I think the question is about how do you plan in the JWCU or probably in the larger framework in JCA? How do you plan on attracting social entrepreneurs to the worker cooperative movement?
right now, JWCU, so we are trying to spread, information or knowledge of workers' cooperatives or about Workers' Cooperative Act in Japan. And so by doing so we believe we could develop, certain kind of social entrepreneurship in Japan. So however, actually, it's a pretty tough question because John, so as you know, in Japan there is no, popular discussions or discourse about social enterprises and social solidarity economy, right? So there is no political discussions, for instance, or legal discussions on social enterprises, social solidarity economy, and social entrepreneurship. So in this regard, still right now, compared to many other European and Latin American countries, it's pretty tough to discuss, social economy or social entrepreneurship. So in this regard, so we are trying to develop, certain kind of entrepreneurship within workers' cooperative movement. So, however, I feel, this kind of initiative is somehow different from, social entrepreneurship in European countries and Latin American countries. This is my feeling on, current situation of current situation surrounding social entrepreneurship or social solidarity economy in Japan?
Thank you for your answer. Like, I'll be very happy to help you spreading the message among the youth. As you know, I've been working with a lot of Japanese universities, and I feel that young people are really interested in having more knowledge about it, but we have to make it some way sexy for them and attractive. But once we show to the youth, like, I think that they'll be more and more interested. Like, there's a lot of work, I know, and I know that you don't have also, like, the press and other people like are not really supportive for the cooperative movement in Japan, but like we have to keep spreading the message because it's the best system at the moment that we can spread for the future alternative economy.
Okay, thank you, John. Maybe one last comment from Professor Dongre. Since you have expanded on the situation in India, can you share your comments? Professor Dongre, can you hear us?
I just posted a couple of my observations and question. I think if they can pick up from the chat box and comment on that, it will be fine. Saves time.
Okay. All right. So you've said about the social enterprise system in Japan. It's more of a functional category than a legal one. Social enterprise can take.
It's not in Japan. Actually, a social enterprise is more of a functional category. What I mean by that is, in many countries, there is no specific law under which a social enterprise will have to incorporate. It can be under any law. And we recognize it as a social enterprise depending on what it does. So, in case of Japan, I think there are many, the NPO law, the new NPO law, under which the NPOs have been established, and slowly some of them are becoming social enterprises. So now maybe this new act gives another option for the, instead of going towards NPO, maybe they can go to the one plus cooperative. I mean, this is how I look at it. Maybe someone can comment on this.
Okay. Are there any final comments, any remarks one would like to make before we? Yeah, Frank. Yeah, you can please share your comment. I'm sorry, Frank, we are not able to hear you.
In Japan, it looks like the types of businesses that are taking on that structure tend to be marginalized areas of the economy and society. And it's like getting it into the mainstream is really difficult. And one of the big challenges is that finance quite often comes through traditional banking structures, and traditional banking structures aren't necessarily attracted to marginalized people or to the worker cooperative structure. So how do we battle our way through that one?
Yeah, totally right. But right now, so JWC, so we have begun talking with some microfinance organization or microcredit credit union organizations. So in order to establish or in order to develop sort of financial structures for workers cooperatives. But such a structure, you are totally right. So such a structure should be different from a private banking system in Japan, I think. So yeah, so we need to create such a network, financial networks for workers cooperatives.
Yeah, may I just share on this question, going by the Indian experience of some cooperatives, how they followed some innovative. We have examples of crowdfunding being used by some cooperatives. I think in the recent past we have the Uravanga cooperative which has done that. We also have a fairly big group of angel investors and impact investors, kind of groups, and they have been supporting workers cooperatives, funding workers cooperatives. It's more like funding. It's an external funding, but without an interest, something of this kind. So such supports are available. But I agree with you, the worker members by themselves cannot really raise a big capital. And then the traditional banking system will not be able to really come to their help. Therefore, I think they need to be more innovative in raising capital.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Okay. Thank you so much, Frank, for that comment, and Professor Dongre and Osamu-san for taking those questions. I think we have already exceeded the timeline for our meeting today. Thank you, everyone, for holding on till we could start with the closing session. In fact, just before we wrap up, I'll remind you that the organizers will, of course, share the presentations and also the proceedings of this meeting with you all. So before which, may I call upon Mr. Balu Iyer to please share his closing remarks and synthesize the meeting that we have, a very insightful meeting that we've just gone for the last 1.5 hours now. Mr. Balu, over to you.
Thank you, Mohit. I'm not sure I'm going to do justice synthesizing, but I think we have an interesting title, From the Marginal to the Mainstream, to see how we can move ahead. Let me thank Osamu and Francisca for giving us an overview of the new act in Japan, and to Francisca for providing an overview of SICOPA and the extensive work that we are doing across the regions. It is, I think, very exciting to have this new act in Japan, and I'm sure this will give a fillip to other countries which are trying to look at coming up with an act in this current context that we are living in. And one example which comes to my mind is in Singapore, where the Singapore government, again through SICOPA, has instituted a study to look at gig workers and how they can be organized either as cooperatives or any other form of collective enterprise. I'm sure there are other examples in the region. And in the chat box, there was a question saying that given the current situation in terms of how the services sector has been affected, and in many countries, agriculture still is large in terms of the number of people that it employs, but then there is a steady drop in the contribution of agriculture to GDP. Even manufacturing has come down, but services have gone up. And even today, when we are talking more about worker cooperatives, some of the examples which we are drawing on are from the manufacturing experiences in the manufacturing area. But I think services and the role of cooperatives in the services sector, and this is more, I'm more talking from the Asia Pacific context. I'm sure, I know in Europe and the Americas, there is a lot of work or progress which has been done as far as worker cooperatives in the social and services sector go. But in the Asia Pacific region, I think there is immense opportunity. And one of the questions in the chat box was in terms of what can ICA and SICOPA do in terms of promoting, in terms of advocacy. I think from both our sides, it's the fillip or the lead needs to be taken, I think, from the national agencies. It could be the national federations or it could be the sectoral federations. I think need to take the lead. And for example, even in Japan, it was the Japan Workers' Cooperative Movement which took the lead. They did have definite support from the SICOPA and other stakeholders. I think we'll be definitely be open when we receive requests from the national movements to support. We can definitely look at how we come up with use the research which has been done and be able to come up with a paper which promotes, looks at also the legal situation and what kind of changes are needed, recommendation. And we have, I think, around this chat box, when you look at the participant, there are a number of who have the experience from different countries who would be, I think, more than to share their experience and provide support. So we can call on many to help us in terms of come up with a paper which we can then use in countries where there is this the need seen to put more and more emphasis on the legal front, on the state of play of worker cooperatives. So that's something which we can do to support. The other is, like I mentioned in the beginning, we need to have pilots. And so if there are countries where there are pilot initiatives, we need to start from somewhere. And if there are pilots, interest for that and work being done, then we can definitely see how we can support that, how we can promote that, how we can provide, so that more and more people, and these webinars are platforms, we can have more such platforms where there is sharing of experience from different countries, from different sectors. I think more we learn about what has happened in other countries and in other sectors, the more it will help us in terms of being able to look at it in our own specific situation. So I think we are definitely open to support, and we are definitely open to provide. Like I said, we are. This is one of the areas where we think is a priority, and we would like to invest more in it. So any suggestions, any ideas, any issues which come up, we can definitely see how we can work with you all in order to promote this area. So I'd like to again thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this presentation. And again, thank you, Osamu, and thank you, Francisca, for making the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for taking part and offering your comments and suggestions. I think it's, for me, it still looks, our appetite has been whetted, but there is nil. We feel waiting for the full meeting. So there is a lot which needs to be done. And we'd like to see how we can all work together in order to move forward on this very important area, especially in the Asia Pacific region. Again, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll keep you posted on the summary of these proceedings, and presentations also will be shared. And we look forward to being in touch and, of course, sharing the next information sessions that we plan in the coming months. Thank you for being here, and take care. Bye-bye.